to the Crooked Table podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yanis Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table podcast. This is Rob. On this show, we democratize the film criticism conversation by bringing on fans and critics alike to dig into their personal connection to a current or classic release. You can find more episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcatchers. Also, drop us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts if you can. And this episode, I am honored to welcome to the show JC from ScreenFix. Welcome.
That's
to the
me.
That is you. Welcome to the Crooked Table podcast.
Thank you for letting me on this show, Crooked Table, because I'm a little crooked, like a criminal. Is that what this? Wait, that's what the show is, right? Like,
sure.
Like admitting criminal acts.
This is not. It's not admissible in court.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, it's all hearsay.
Yeah. It's off the record. Just happens to be available to the entire internet. So Well,
I'm gonna lay all my crooked deeds out on this table.
So we obviously had the Lady Juan from your podcast on here a few months back to talk about La La Land. So tell people a little bit about ScreenFix if they haven't, for some reason, haven't listened to, haven't caught the show or my guest appearances on it or anything. A little intro.
Okay. I am host of a podcast called ScreenFix, and yes, the co-host that carries the show was on Crooked Table. She did La La Land. Her name is Lady Juan. You can follow her on Twitter at Lady Juan. And our show is one where the two of us and a guest, usually from another podcast, a film podcast, some of the titans, the giants of podcasting, like Robert Yanis Jr. That's
right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Have been
on this podcast, gracing this podcast, really. And we talk a recent film. Robert Yanis Jr., you helped us fix. We don't talk we fix a recent film. We talk about it too, but the whole point of the show is we fix a film. We just kind of, it's the same as when you see a movie with friends and then afterwards you're getting your pizza or you're having your beer and you're like, you know what I would have done maybe? That's what the whole show is. I mean, it's not that loose. There's a structure to it, but yeah. And Robert, what did you help us fix?
Well, I was on in October of last year to talk about Joker, but you weren't on that episode. So
I was not. It was only the second episode out of the almost 100 that I was not in.
I didn't mean to intimidate you away from your own show, so apologies for that.
You did. I was like, well, he hosts better. He's
too crooked. He's too crooked.
I'm going to sit this one out. Plus, he's from some podcast about crooked things. I'm going to leave that one alone. I'll end up in a ditch.
Perfect fit for Joker, though, as it turns out. And then more recently, The Old Guard, the Netflix movie, which was a lot of fun to talk about, actually.
Yes, The Old Guard. You are on that episode. You make that episode with your good sense of humor and your awesome fixes for that one, making the movie better. And so that is basically the premise of ScreenFix. Check us out, screenfixpod.com. And we're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, everywhere podcasts are. And check us out. You might like it. It's goofy.
You might like it. It's goofy. That's the tagline for the show.
You might like it. It's goofy.
So obviously this has been a kind of a year unlike any other. So how is it? I'm just curious, as another, fellow movie podcaster, how has it been trying to talk about movies without that much, as much original content? Has it been easier or harder to pick movies to fix?
You just lob that softball up. It's been awful for us. I mean, at least with Crooked Table, you guys can talk about old movies and this and that. Our whole thing was fixing the recent big movie that came out. So right. It's been awful. And we've had to, stoop to streaming services, Netflix, Amazon. It's been really sad and terrible. I mean, we might even do what's that one that's out right now? Pill Power or what? Project Power.
Yeah.
We might even do that. It's really sad times, but no. So during COVID, we've had to go with whatever the hot streaming movie was. So early on, it was Extraction was the first one we did.
There you go.
The Chris Hemsworth action movie. Then we did the other big one that came out, King of Staten Island. We did, and then The Old Guard, and now we might do Pill Popper superheroes projects. So we might do that one, and then hopefully we're back to new stuff with New Mutants, which is so lucky with its release date, low stakes, and no competition. That's exactly what New Mutants needs. And when it comes out, I think since it's been in development hell for years and years and years, the thing was finished like 5 years ago. Macy Williams was like, who knows what season of Game of Thrones, still a child when she's making this movie.
She was like 7 when they made the movie.
She was like, yes, she was out of diapers. She was getting into pull-ups, and she made this movie. And but yeah, that's probably going to be the one. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty to fix.
Yeah, and I love, right before we started recording, we were talking about New Mutants. I love your perspective on that, because my mindset is, this is the movie that they're asking people to put their lives on the line for, and yours is, well, no one else will watch it otherwise, so this is the perfect place to throw it out there. It's either this or like the doldrums of January when nobody's going to the movies anyway.
Exactly. So it's just so low stakes. Like no studio wanted to release this thing anyway. Like, I read that part of the stipulation of Fox selling, its, properties to Disney was that any film that was already finished had to have a theatrical release. So that's why you haven't seen this movie on any streaming services. Otherwise, it absolutely would have gone to one. So they have to put it out in theaters. Why not put it out with no competition at all, low stakes, and see if anybody actually goes and sees this thing? That's the only way they're going to make anything off of it, and also satisfy their contractual obligations to have these mutants on screen.
Right. And if you're a podcast that, I don't know, specializes in fixing severely flawed movies,
perfect.
It's perfect.
I'm licking my chops. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going in with my
double length episode.
Yeah. Going in with my Twizzlers and my notepad. I'm just gonna start scribbling down.
Adamantium claws ready to go. Like, all right, New Mutants, bring it on, bub.
Yeah, and an icy.
Yeah,
and I try to drink the icy with a Twizzler. Never quite works.
It doesn't, right? It's just too small.
I always want it to work. Like, it seems perfect. They should make straw Twizzlers just for the movies.
They should.
Uh-oh.
That's one way to get rid of the plastic straws out of it.
Is this an idea?
I think
Yanis,
so.
are you in? Do you got some?
I think we're down. Twizzler straws.
Have you just come into like a little financial windfall recently, and you're looking for something to invest in? Because I got an idea for you.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it.
Candy straw for the movie theater.
Well, they're already doing what is it? Corn something straw, like all the sustainable ones. So might as well make them edible.
It just ends up mushy. I hate that thing.
I know.
It's awful. Ugh.
The things we do for their ocean life, I guess.
The things we do for the animal kingdom.
Whatever. Cricket Table is very concerned with the animal welfare. Just to throw that out there.
So is Screen Fix.
I don't want to get any.
Spay and neuter your pets.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to get any angry tweets or anything about that.
Cut all your 6-pack plastic.
Oh God. So this episode, we are talking about Starman from 1984. And I guess before we get into the movie itself, where you kind of alluded to this movie's very specific place in John Carpenter's filmography. And that was one of the things that I noticed. Like, I had actually forgotten that Carpenter had directed this movie. So when I saw his name up front, I was like, that's random.
You were like, what?
Yeah. So speak to where you feel Starman fits within his filmography of Halloween and The Fog and all these horror and very, very different genre films.
Yeah, that's a big ask, and I am up to the task. So this movie is it's Carpenter's, it was Carpenter's escape from the genre that he started. They talk about like the golden age of horror. And the golden age of horror, they say, starts at 78 and ends at 84. 84 is exactly when this movie comes out. And this is also when Carpenter departs and makes a sci-fi romance. It started in 1978 with his movie Halloween. There were other slasher movies, but before that, of course, there was like Black Christmas, and there was stuff after like Child's Play. But Halloween is seen as kind of the beginning of that golden age of slasher films. Now, by the time 1984 rolls around, Carpenter has had a couple duds. He made a bunch of successful slashers. So he did Halloween, and he did The Fog. And
I think Starman was coming after The Thing, which now is a classic. Then
Starman came after The Thing, which was a dud. And he was actually afraid after The Thing that his career might be finished. I mean, it was a financial failure, and he actually attributes some of that to the fact that he had made a very pessimistic movie. It was like relentlessly pessimistic, and now you're looking at this. His next movie out here. He's going to take this movie Starman that has been passed on by all kinds of people. It's being produced by Michael Douglas, the actor, and he bought this thing like 5 years previous. And it had been a lot of different directors had looked at it, and a lot of different writers had touched it as well, and including like the writer of like Dirty Harry. Like, it's had so many hands on it, and so many directors had touched it and walked away from it. Actually, so something else about this movie is it was at Columbia Pictures, and it was purchased by Michael Douglas and brought to Columbia Pictures at the same time as Steven Spielberg wanted to make a movie called Dark Skies. Dark Skies or Night Skies?
Night Skies, I think.
Night Skies. You wanted to make Night Skies, which was an alien movie, like an alien invasion movie, but it was like kid friendly, and
that'll never work.
The head of Columbia was like, yeah, I don't want to make this kid friendly alien movie. Let's concentrate on Starman. And of course, Steven Spielberg brings E.T. to Universal, and the rest is history. E.T. becomes the biggest film at the time of all time. But so we've got Starman, this like tossed aside stepchild to E.T. And of course, like I said, it's been passed on by all of these people. And, John Carpenter, he sees it as a way to prove that he can do something else, that he doesn't always have to make like what people might call either slasher movies, or, because sometimes he wasn't always making slasher movies, but exploitation films. So he wanted to show that he wasn't just going to do exploitation films, which is a moniker that's earned. He right out of the gate, his first film that he directed got an X rating, because that was Assault on Precinct 13, of course, because he showed the murder of a little girl, which got him an X rating. But so no stranger to those kind of labels. But so here he is. He's going to do something else. Going to do something a little bit more commercial, and it's going to be a sci-fi road trip romance comedy. He actually saw it as a comedy, a la like Frank Capra. He saw this as like a road trip romance comedy, and when you watch the movie, it definitely has shades of that, of course, with a sci-fi bent, because of course Jeff Bridges is an alien. So but it is a very sweet love story. Unfortunately for him, this turn into something else was, while it was critically well received, it was received okay. People who loved sci-fi and kind of like the Carpenter aesthetic did not like it. They thought it was derivative. They thought it was kind of corny, cheesy. They thought the special effects were bad, even though he hired guys from Industrial Light and Magic to do the best special effects guys, period, including Rick Baker. Rick Baker worked on the movie. Those guys, for the most part, worked on the transformation scene in the very beginning, when he went from alien sphere to baby to adult Jeff Bridges. So they all were nasty about the movie. They didn't think he put their effects in the right light, and they thought maybe that they were kind of misled about the budget the movie was going to have. And it came out against Dune, and it came out against 2010, the sequel to 2001, and 2010 came in first, Dune came in second, and Starman was somewhere below that. It was not a hit.
It's in 1984 was a very sci-fi heavy year. I think, you mentioned E.T., which I watching this, I was struck by, this is very E.T. influenced. And then to come to realize, no, they were floating around the same time. And then some executive put their chips on the wrong script, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
And then just, that movie came out, and then every studio in town was, we have a sci-fi script, fast track that, get it out. And they all hit theaters in 1984, apparently, including Starman. But yeah, I think it is an interesting change of pace for Carpenter. And, before we get too deep into the movie, I wanted to also ask, I guess let's get into the movie, since we're kind of already talking about it.
Sure.
And then I want to hear about first, your experience watching it and all of that. So let's listen to a little bit of the trailer for Starman from 1984 right now.
Get ready. Someone is coming. Someone like no one she has ever known before.
Can you clone a living organism from the hair of a dead man?
We're hypothesizing a technology that's probably 100,000 years ahead of us.
He has powers we cannot imagine, and the face and touch of the man she loved.
I send greetings.
What's the matter with you?
How much English do you understand?
I understand greetings in 54 planet Earth languages.
Do you seriously expect me to tell the President that an alien has landed, assumed the identity of a dead house painter, and is presently out tooling around the countryside in a hopped-up 1977 Mustang?
That was a little bit of the trailer for Starman from 1984, directed by John Carpenter, as we said. So, JC, what is, when I said I wanted to have you on the show, obviously, the Lady One was on, so I was like, I got to complete the set. I got to get JC on next.
And you're like, why is he picking this thing?
No, well, we'll get to that in a second. So, what is it about Starman that made you want to pick it? Like, what is your experience with this movie?
As somebody who grew up on, renting movies, HBO back in the day, thing would come down over the little model of the city. It would fly over the little town, go over the mountain, up into space, and then you'd go into the HBO logo, and it would say feature presentation. You'd be like, "Yay, new movie Saturday night," and you loved it. Just a kid of that time period, and then of course. I actually went to college to go to film school, ended up not getting in, but worked with all of my film school friends. And then I ended up going to LA, and I did end up working on films and TV shows in production, in a production role. I've just continued on. I started my first film podcast back in 2008. So I've been doing this for a long time. So it's like asking somebody, it's not like asking like my aunt what her favorite movie is, and she's like Dirty Dancing. It's like immediate reaction. For me, it's like, wow, what a question. Like I have to sit back and be like, what the heck am I going to talk about?
Right.
Like what can I talk about at length? And I just thought to myself, well, lately I've been catching up on my John Carpenter. Like I watched Assault on Precinct 13. I watched The Fog again. I watched They Live. Yeah, I've just been like going back and watching some of this stuff because lately, I don't know, like the pandemic has me looking for comfort food. in the like visual comfort food. And for me, those kind of films are that visual comfort food. I mean, John Carpenter movies are a little odd, but
as you said, not this one. This one is the more positive of his bunch.
Yeah, but this is his sweet mainstream movie, you know. And of course, after this, he would make Big Trouble in Little China, which was going to be another flop. And like the guy just is never had the same success as he did with those first couple slasher movies. Halloween, The Fog, Escape from New York, he actually made in there as well. Yeah. But he never had that same kind of success. He just kind of struggled. But then, of course, his aesthetic became one of the defining aesthetics of an entire decade. This particular movie, so I had already been going through a Carpenter thing. And Starman, I remember seeing when I was a kid. I remember renting it. I remember the cover. I remember, grabbing that VHS and going home and popping it open and watching it. And I remember, even though it's not geared for kids, like it's not a kids movie, but there's nothing in it that's bad either. Like, there's nothing in it that probably a kid can't watch. The alien was like this big child. Like he kind of has to learn how to be a human being. And it is this kind of interesting romance. And as I got older, it's funny because when I was a little kid, it's like, oh, look at the interesting alien man. And as I get older, I'm like, oh, look at this interesting sci-fi film. And now that I'm a little older, I'm like, look at this outstanding romance film. It just kind of like has evolved for me over time, from alien, a goofy alien, to some serious sci-fi, to romance. I consider this film probably one of the great romances of the 80s. I think that Karen Allen and Jeff Bridges have you can feel it in their performance, and everything that I've read about them, they genuinely enjoyed each other, genuinely had chemistry, and have nothing but good things to say about working together. They even recorded a song together for this movie. They did a music video. While they were filming this, they would actually sing together when they weren't doing scenes. So it's all of that stuff comes across on screen, and I come back to this movie a lot. It's one of those movies that I watch multiple times a year. I own it, and it's one of those movies where when I don't know what to watch on Sunday before work or before the work week starts, every month or so I can pop this movie in, and I absolutely enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. No, it's crazy looking at Carpenter's career, because I feel like so few filmmakers have that many misfires and then end up having still achieving that legend status that he has. And I'm actually glad that you picked this one, because I feel like of his like Hollow or Assault from Precinct 13, like through, let's say, I don't know, They Live or thereabouts. Mm-hmm. I feel like this is the one that's least talked about. Yeah. And it just kind of gets lost in the shuffle amidst all those other, I guess, seemingly, more fun or more thrilling or whatever releases. And my experience with this movie is that I actually today watched this for the first time.
What?
I had never seen Starman before.
No way. Okay. So just the cover art, or just the poster they show, what was the first thing that you thought of?
So I was aware of this movie as a kid. I knew it existed. And I think it's funny that you mentioned like Sunday afternoon, like that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I feel like it was on TV occasionally, and I would flip by it and be like, I don't know, this seems sort of like quiet or whatever. Like it didn't appeal to me as a kid, just because it is very, not quiet's the wrong word. It's very like sort of ethereal and sort of reflective in a way for a movie, for someone like me growing up and watching like Roger Rabbit and shit like that. Yeah. So it's not anything that I ever sat down and watched. So when I started it, I knew that Jeff Bridges and Karen Allen were in it. I knew it was an alien. I didn't know that he was taking the form of her dead husband.
Yeah.
Until I started the movie. And then I was like, whoa, wait, that's him
it's heavy.
in the whole movies.
It's pretty heavy, right?
Yeah. And so all of that took me by surprise. I had just the very barest semblance of what the movie was. And I was actually pleasantly surprised. Like I went in and I was like, okay, Starman, I'm familiar with that sort of. We'll see. That'll probably be an interesting movie. And then after watching, I was like, that was kind of awesome.
Oh, really?
Like it by the end, like there's a scene, and we have a lot more to cover, but there's a moment where Sherman, played by Charles Martin Smith, who I knew from American Graffiti, and then he went on to direct Air Bud and Dolphin Tale and things like that randomly.
Right. Yeah.
Where he has a really great arc that I love, but he says to Starman, he says, in
the diner.
In the diner, and Starman says to him, "Do you want me to tell you what I find most beautiful about your species?" And he says, "Yes." And he says, "You're at your very best when things are worse." And I kind of got a little emotional, especially right now in the middle of everything politically and with the pandemic and everything.
Yes, right.
So I was just like, wow, that's kind of profound for this movie that I just saw as sort of a romantic drama version of E.T. at first. So I was really kind of taken aback by how good it was, just because seeing Carpenter's name up front, I didn't really know what to expect.
Yeah, this movie gets me many times, and not only is it the story, but you want to hear another thing unique about this movie is it's one of the few movies that Carpenter didn't score himself.
Mm-hmm.
But if you would have asked me if he did score it, I would say yeah, because it has like that. It's that Carpenter-esque synth score,
right?
But it's not him. Here it is. Jack Nietzsche received a Golden Globe nomination for this movie, and I love the score. I mean, when there are just scenes where so it just makes it. It's so good, and he just the movie as a whole is so good, from the score to the acting. I get feels so much in this, even in the very beginning. Just Karen Allen looking at old footage of her husband, and she's drinking wine, and she's like, why are you doing this to yourself? Just all that stuff. It's so heavy and just gets you're so the why this movie is as successful as it is it puts character first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this is such a success. I know that Jeff Bridges was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor for this movie, and only time any film by John Carpenter has received an Academy Award nom, which is
crazy,
pretty sad, which is absolutely crazy and sad. But yeah, I mean, and what's interesting about his performance too, and I think why they get to you so much emotionally is I just think Karen Allen has always had kind of an innocence to her, even tough, yet also at the same time very vulnerable. And she was like that when she played Mary in Ravenwood and Raiders of the Lost Ark. But here she really shines. And I know that director John Carpenter had run into her when he was in New York for some reason, and knew right away that she needed to be Jenny Hayden, and she was cast first. Then it was a matter of finding his Starman.
I could see that because
Scott Hayden.
Yeah, I could see that because I think Karen Allen. I actually recently recorded an episode on Raiders of the Lost Ark. So you do see that quality that she brings to that film as well, as you mentioned. But there's just something very naturalistic about her. I feel like her performance has to carry this movie. Like, if you don't believe her emotional arc, if you don't believe her reactions to Starman, this all falls apart. And Jeff Bridges is great in the movie, but of course he gets the Oscar nomination over her, I think, because his performance is a little more showy. It's a little more.
Well, you also have to believe, he has to be believable enough to make it plausible that she might actually be able to fall in love with him.
Right.
And I think that's where Jeff Bridges also kind of brings that same thing to the table. I feel like Bridges has like an innocent quality to himself as well. And, he based his performance, because the things he bases his performance on are things that you probably should not fall in love with. Like, he based his head movements off of birds.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why and if you watch the movie again with that knowledge, you see his head moves the entire time, just like a bird would, up, down, side, constantly just looking at everything, but with very deliberate head movements. And his body movement, he had a dancer friend who he thought had this like very interesting way that he moved, like an almost alien way that he moved. And he had this dancer kind of show him how to move his body in this strange way. So his body is odd. His head movements are strange, yet still somehow at the end of this movie, you're sitting there emotional about these two people.
According to my research, some of the other people up for this were like Kevin Bacon and Tom Cruise. And it's like, I don't know if you don't have the right people, this could all come off really weird, I guess is the best way. Because it's an alien who looked to me like Eve from WALL-E initially, kind of like a glowing sphere type deal. We don't really get a like straight up good look at the true form of the aliens. They just carry around the little metal stress ball things.
Yeah, they have their So
they have balls. We know that. So.
Like insert like jiggle your balls joke.
Right
here, put your balls in your hand joke.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, he's always carrying around these these little like alien balls that apparently he can manipulate to do almost whatever he wants. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're just his connection to
with whatever power
civilization.
And
he has a finite number of them as well. They sort of establish that up front. But it comes down, turns into her husband, her deceased husband. Which, by the way, you mentioned I thought the transformation scene was really cool. Actually,
me too.
And go ahead.
It's just the fact that some of it is. You know why? Because it's very indicative of just like that 80s body horror, like that the American Werewolf in London,
right? Which is what I loved about
type
it.
Of trans. Yes. So it's got that like, you know why? Because there's something about practical effects, even when they're just done okay, or even when they're good. So let's just say this: if they're not great, if practical effects are just good, they still hit you somewhere that like CGI doesn't, and it just. Or it doesn't yet. So that's why I'm watching this, and you're watching like skin stretch and heads stretch and move, and you can almost see the like mechanisms working behind the scenes. Hydraulic head moving and fake skin bubbling, but it still hits you in a very visceral way because it's practical.
And I think that some of those moments, the transformation scene, the emerging from the fire when he's carrying her, is you sort of get some of the iconography and some of the style that Carpenter brings to it, where in moments it does sort of have elements of horror, like you said, body horror, and moments of menace where she's, for the first half of this movie, she's trying to get away from him.
Yes. She's like, she doesn't know if this thing's going to kill her. She's like, okay, there's like, I love that right away. She goes, "You're not Scott."
Right.
Like, I love that the moment she sees him, she's like, "Scott." And then almost immediately she's like, "You're not Scott." So she knows that's not her husband right away. Right. And I feel like a worse movie would have teased it and made her figure it out like halfway through, and she's like, "Oh my God, you're not my husband. You've been tricking me." Right. But it's so much more like believable that somebody would look at somebody that they were married to and loved and was like, "This is not, I just saw you grow from a baby to a man on the floor, and you are not.
Red flag.
You
Red
are
flag. You're
not.
probably not my
You
husband.
are. You look like my husband, but you are weird, and you're talking all these languages that you learned from the Voyager 2
Right.
space probe. You
That
know,
was super cool.
Yeah, I like that too. How the movie begins with the Voyager 2 space probe. I looked at the wiki because I was like, oh, how many languages? Because he says the languages, and he says 54 in the movie, and on the Wikipedia it says 55. Yeah, that just one of those languages. They were like, that's just noises.
Right.
It was like
binary or something. But knowing that they were going to do some PG chin kissing later in the movie, which is basically what the sex scene is.
Yes. Yes. The sex scene is like a little side boob and some chin kissing.
Yeah.
With his like, prom night face.
Right.
Like
Lonely Island, jizz in my pants, but like a more toned down version of that, essentially.
He's got that virginity face. Totally. Wow.
But knowing that it was headed there, and seeing the alien come into her home and watch the video and like do the voice scan and all that stuff, I was like, oh no, don't tell me she's gonna like sleep with this thing thinking it's her husband. And then when she realized immediately when she saw the man baby on the floor, like writhing around and growing into Jeff Bridges before her very eyes, I was like, okay, first awkward hurdle avoided. Good job, movie.
Yes. I mean, it very cheaply could have snuck in some like very inappropriate sex scene,
right?
But it stayed away from that, which I'm glad. I'm glad it did. Yeah,
the alien doesn't get some immediately, and they'd be like, "Fooled you from space." So that was the first thing, and then secondly,
he doesn't like finish, and then like smoke comes out of his ears or some his head spins around or something.
Or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Awooga.
So that's the first one. Secondly, he more or less kidnaps her. Not really, but kind of.
I think he does. Like he definitely is. Like he's got the gun on.
But it's
her,
not.
So.
But it's not under. He makes it clear that he's not going to hurt her. Like that's why he chose that form.
Yeah,
and all that. Go ahead.
And then of course she's still like, I need to escape this guy, and makes multiple attempts to get away.
So knowing that again, the romance was still ahead, I was like, well, is this going to end up being some kind of weird Beauty and the Beast-esque, like, he's abusive to her or like kidnapping her, and then she falls for him because she's victimized. And the movie subverts that too. Like midway through, they're popping in and out of. They go to like 4 diners in this movie.
This is probably like the first time that a movie is like realistically showing how many times you would stop to eat and how probably nothing happens in the car, and most of your action on a long road trip is when you stop at the gas station.
That's true. A lot of rest stops and diners with apple pie and cherry cobbler and all that good stuff, which made me hungry watching the movie. Actually, it's terrific. But then the moment with the deer happens, and that's how the movie starts to turn. There,
and they set that up earlier in the movie when he's watching the home movies. Mm-hmm. There's a moment where she is showing compassion to a raccoon.
Right. Yeah.
And so they set up that like love of, she loves, she loves all beings. She loves, animals, and she's a compassionate person. So, and she obviously thinks those hunters are quote unquote bozos. So, yes, that moment is where she sees that he is maybe he is a compassionate being. Maybe he is not just a cold alien kidnapper, which he's kind of been. He's just kind of been like a weird child learning the rules of the planet. Mm-hmm. And that's where he actually shows probably a bit of his first kind of human traits, like compassion. So, and that's where it starts to turn.
Yeah, watching it now, sure. I noticed how much it feels like James Cameron cribbed a lot of Terminator 2 from this movie in a way. Just the way that he's learning to be human, define love, and then he like smokes and reacts to that, and he's like learning the lingo and the facial expressions.
Oh yeah, like, because there's the scene
very hasta la vista baby kind of thing.
Because there's that scene where he's learning, where the guy goes, take it easy. And the guy goes, up yours. And he associates that as like the natural follow-up to Take It Easy. So, which also comes back in the movie.
Exactly.
Take it easy, up yours. So it does. There's like a little bit of that. Man, Terminator 2's ripping off Starman.
Right? We're calling it on the Crooked Table podcast. You heard it here first.
T2, nothing but a ripoff. Cameron's a hack.
Well, I mean, his Avatar is essentially Fern Gully with Dances with Wolves.
Oh my goodness!
And stuff. So I mean that's not new information.
Stealing.
He is
terrible.
But yeah. So that was the second issue, and then or potential issue that the movie expertly navigates around. Yep. Then thirdly, when they finally do have sex, and he's like, "I put a baby in you," I'm like, "Whoa!" Hashtag where's the consent? Kind of thing. It almost feels like kind of that situation. But then again, the movie circumvents that by he immediately tells her, I have something to tell you. This is what happened. He's like, oh, I didn't wear a rubber, that kind of thing. It's one of those moments almost.
Right. I mean, it was the 80s.
Right. It's true. That's true. And
rubbers are for sailors.
That reminds me of Austin Powers. He's like, they should, those filthy beggars. They go from port to port, which at some point I'm going to have to talk about it in this podcast. But it feels like another potential mine that the movie skirts right past, where then he's like, if you don't want it, I can take it away. Yeah, it's going to be your husband's. She they established earlier in the movie that she couldn't have a baby with Scott. Clearly that's something that they wanted. So she gets this baby that's part Starman, part her, part Scott, sort of. And I don't know. It makes it handles that moment very delicately in a way that you're fine with being on board with these characters, as opposed to something that could feel in a way icky, especially as you mentioned, how Starman kind of has the mind of a child. So it almost goes back to like the big thing where you're like, but Elizabeth Perkins just had sex with like a 13-year-old. So
yes,
I don't know about that.
Yeah. And like, she doesn't get it. Like, he's like, come over and jump on my trampoline in my apartment. I get the top bunk. Here's some pajamas.
Right. So I was impressed with how well this movie handled the love story. And it's a true, it's a true two-hander between the two of them, and just how much that chemistry carries things.
Yeah.
And then, the more conventional, I guess, E.T.-esque analog of like the government is evil, which, is nothing new nowadays, obviously, either. Yeah. But the government is evil. And go ahead.
Apparently there was more political type material in this movie. The writer just kind of like obliged Carpenter by removing the film's like heavy political material. He also wanted them to take out a scene where Jeff Bridges' character is complete by getting clone genitals, but so they took that they took that out as well. It was probably some scene where he was going to look down and give the camera a wink, I'm sure.
Oh boy, yeah, good cut there.
Yeah, but yeah, so some of those and I'm sure the political stuff had to do with the government at the time.
I think it functions better without it. Not that that can't be interesting, but it also, that doesn't really feel like what the movie is interested in. It doesn't feel like that's what the movie cares about. We mentioned Charles Martin Smith, and I think Sherman is an interesting character, the way he evolves from, we're going to get this alien to, I'm going to help him get out of here and get myself in trouble with the government, with George Fox or whatever, blow smoke in his face and kind of get one up on my superiors, let the alien escape. Like, I love that arc, but that would have made the movie feel, in my opinion, really self-serious and really kind of bogged it down. Like, I like that we don't get that much of that. You need it there to add a sense of urgency and, you know, to have that chase element of the story and keep them moving from diner to diner, I guess. But I think it's way more interested in, it's a very humanistic movie as far as like the beauty within people themselves. And it's about, in my opinion, about him kind of teaching her what it means to be human, because the way we see it, she's basically disconnected from everything. And so it feels much more of an intimate, earnest story than the government's coming to get you, Starman. Can we get there in time? Like, it's not that kind of thing.
No, it's just high paced and high concept enough to have a good hook. And then it's just subtle enough and just like pleasing enough to keep you, you know, in a watching, because it is a simple, love story with a pursuit, you know, going on. It's also got its share of, like, I think really, like, nothing in the movie makes me go and I, you know, fall over laughing.
Right.
But so many lines in the movie I think are very, like, humorous, and I can remember quoting them when I was a kid to friends and things. You know, like the famous scene where he says, you know, green light, red light, stop, green light, go, yellow, go very fast. You know, like, like, you know, when he says that he watched her, or I can remember me and my sister used to say, what is kidnapped? You know, we used to say that to each other and stuff like that. And, you know, we used to, you know, act like weird aliens and stuff. But, you know, there's those lines, or there's a line where the guy punches him and he says bingo and spits. And then, of course, Starman hits him back and says bingo and spits. And then there's just the really cute stuff. Like, it's just such a great, I'm really surprised how good the screenplay is for how many people touched it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just feel like it went through so many directors and so many different writers, and just to end up with this pared down simple movie, I think is amazing. And I mean, it even's got, you know, he has a couple, you know, light moments, like when they end up in Vegas.
I love that.
And he can control the slot machines, and it's so funny because he does the one, and then she's like, yes. So you should really be careful, and you should spread it around. These people kind of get, and then pew, he's set off the $500,000 slot machine, and he's won. And then in the very next scene, because they're gambling anyway, because they need enough money to get to the crater, he's just buying a new, like, Cadillac to get to the crater.
Yeah.
And it's just I just love that scene. It's such a great scene. I just think that the screenplay is so great, and I think that the simplified story just make this a classic.
There was a lot of ways they could have mucked that up too, like not only with the government thing, but also just with explaining his alien species, his civilization, what he's doing here. Like, it's Sherman, I think, hypothesizes that he's more of an anthropologist, kind of studying our species, but we don't even get that much detail into that. It's just, he's here, you know, deal with it kind of thing. And I like that they don't even answer the little they don't answer what Jeff Bridges' balls do in this movie, other than give her a baby. I guess
they don't, right? You know, Charles Martin Smith's character says a lot of the lines. He's kind of the only one asking the questions. Like, there is the part where he says something like, you know, what happens when the colonists meet the natives or whatever, you know, the cannibals, they eat, you know, oh, that's what the cannibals said before they ate the colonists or whatever. And then he's like, well, in this case, you know, who's the colonist and who's the cannibal? Like, he's the one who's asking those questions, whereas the government people, of course, they're first, you know, they're those kind of like, you know, shoot first, nuke 'em type 80s government people.
Exactly. Yeah. So even in that way, it's the movie feels ahead of its time in having that perspective represented too. One question, like, related to the alien technology, In your mind, what does the baby know to do with that last silver marble ball thing?
I don't know, but we can probably consult the Starman TV show that came out after the movie.
Yeah, is that a continuation of this,
Yes,
or it
so
is?
It's a continuation.
I had notes of that because I was like, there was a TV show. Interesting.
There was. It takes place years later, and his father comes down and, of course, takes the body of another dead person. I think in this case, he takes place of like a dead pilot, and then he goes and finds his son, and they have to go find the missing Jenny Hayden. That's kind of the plot of it.
Wow.
But I haven't watched enough of it to know if he's used his if he's played with the balls that played with the
if
ball.
His teenage son played with his balls.
His teenage son played with his balls or not. Yeah,
getting awkward. That's what we do here.
He plays with them and they turn blue. That's what.
Yeah, essentially,
just like in the movie. Yeah.
It's also this movie coming out just a couple years after Mork and Mindy. Feels like it has some kind of that energy too. Like they could have gone so much with the fish out of water stuff that it then just became ridiculous, and it would have felt more like Mork and Mindy, you know?
Yeah, like John Carpenter keeps this movie right in his like wheelhouse. He's not trying to make anything wacky because that's not his thing. His thing is kind of tough humor, and he comes from a world of shock value and tough anti-heroes and things like that. He's not. I'm glad that he didn't go in and try to make a hard comedy. You know what? But the thing is this is to him, he was making a road trip comedy. Mm-hmm. So that should tell you about the mind of John Carpenter. I don't think there's a lot of silly stuff going on up there. Because this movie definitely has humor. It's got humor and heart, but it's by no means goofy or silly. There's no moment where you suddenly go, oh, what's this wacky, like unbelievable wacky thing that just happened? Like there's none of that in this. It instead of devolving in something too light or silly,
Yeah. It's the kind of the extent of it is he doesn't know that dessert comes after your meal. Whoa.
Yeah. Whoa. He's eating his pie first. What? What a card.
Yeah, exactly.
He's crazy. What a dumb alien. He's looking at the guy in the bathroom's penis.
They did have that joke. That did not age particularly well. The guy in the bathroom is like, oh, they're everywhere or something.
No, he says, every goddamn place you go. That's what he said. It wasn't as bad as they're everywhere.
It was pretty close. That was the implication. But yes,
does say
it's the PG version of that.
Every goddamn place you go. But that's also where he learns up yours. So, hey.
It's true. Worth it.
It's necessary.
Necessary evil.
It was necessary for the plot, yeah.
Right.
But also, to his credit, Starman was staring at his penis.
That's true. That's true. That's true. I don't think I'd like Jeff Bridges creeping up on me in the restroom.
He came over with his bird head movements, looking at your dong in a
taking notes
in a gas station restaurant. You'd probably be like, whoa, hey, buddy.
Eyes up here. My eyes up. Buy me some apple pie first, at least.
Yeah. Buy me some apple pie first. That's so funny. It's terrific.
He does say at one point, somebody asked him, what's your line? Like, what do you do? Basically. And he does say map maker. I make maps.
I make maps. So yeah.
I guess, is that his job in his civilization? Because he has that very 80s display of a map that he does in the car.
Yeah, he does, which I thought was interesting because I was like, I wonder if the Voyager 2 has a map of the U.S. because that's what he pulls up.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's a map of the U.S. with all the state boundaries and everything. All right. So
yeah, I thought that was maybe that's his role.
States as political entities.
That's true.
So okay, and he's like right here. Arizona or whatever, or wherever they go. But apparently he just says he makes who knows, maybe that's maybe up in his Maybe that's why they sent him down there for his recon. Because at the very beginning, he says that, of course, they scatter jets to like shoot at him, so his craft ends up crashing. But he says that his observation craft has crashed. So who knows? Maybe he's there to scout things out and map some stuff.
But again, I like that they don't clarify any of that. Really,
No,
we're just like he's just checking things out, and he got crashed, and now he's discovering humanity.
Because it's probably too weird. I mean, he even says like if he's down there too long, he's gonna die. Like he only has 3 days there, and then at the very end, she's like, "Take me with you," and he's like, "You can't. You'll die." And then there's like that line. Oh my God, I'm getting so old. Like in my old age, like I used to be such a tough dude, like no crying, no nothing. And now I swear to God, I start bawling at every has this started happening to you yet? Like, do you bawl more at movies the older you get?
I mean, I've always been really sensitive when it comes to movies, generally. I mean, honestly, but I mean, it has a lot more. As you get older, and you see your parents get older. Like I have a daughter now, so everything is different. Yeah, totally. So wait, where's the moment where it gets you?
Oh, so at the moment when he's just like, she's like, take me with you, and they're in that really cool, like red and white.
Yes, I love that
light. So cool. It's so cool. Yeah, I love that so much. And I just love the whole scene. And she's like, I don't care. Like she doesn't care if she'll die. And he's like, I do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just he's really has just. They learn, like he learns what she says what love is, because he asked her to explain it. She goes, it's when you care about someone else more than you care about yourself. So that's the whole thing going full circle. Like in this road trip with Jenny Hayden, this alien has learned love, and that's really powerful at the end. And it's not overly done. Like it's not like in like a Fifth Element when she's like, I do not know love, and then she gets like a kiss and she suddenly knows love, and she's like, I'm so powerful. Like it's not heavy handed like that. It's just it's like you have to think about it. You're like, oh my God, he understands human love. You know what I mean? Like you have to, he doesn't say, that it's just not heavy handed like that. And that's like, again, it's this movie's like restraint that makes it so good.
Yeah. It's just very matter of fact. And, I'm glad you mentioned the end sequence with it's like some kind of snow situation happening, or dust with the spaceship in the red light in that environment. And, obviously Jenny dies or is dying at one point. She gets shot, and he brings her back. And I don't even think she realizes that she was mortally wounded, because she just wakes up and like, where did he go? Do you think she even knows?
Did he change her shirt or so? Oh, was there clothes in that half of a house?
Maybe.
Because remember, they end up in that mobile house that like my, some of my like relatives had back in the day, the double wide.
I mean, if there was, I actually even made a note, like, why isn't Starman changing his clothes? Everybody's looking for Jeff Bridges in that red plaid shirt. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, change your clothes. That might help. You watch any movie where they're like, we're looking for a 6 foot tall Caucasian male,
right?
About 35, wearing a red plaid shirt. First thing you do is change your shirt. And he was just like, nope, I'm rocking this look.
I feel like they don't know at first that anyone's after them.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to remember when the first time that they realize they're being chased is. I think it's when they're at the motel, which is pretty late in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
with the cops, and they're like, I think this is about to escalate to a life or death situation or whatever.
Yeah. Oh yeah, those
assholes,
stupid cops that are like gonna force the issue. Yeah. Exactly. And I just love too how that's just one of those moments too where the alien Starman is learning how good people can be. Like those like the party goers are willing to make, like, they don't know them, but those party goers are willing to like throw the vending machine down the stairs to like distract the cops so they can get away. And he's just like seeing people helping people, you know. Of course, he also sees the bad side too with the hunters beat him up, but
well, they're bozos and jerks.
Yes,
so,
they are. They're bozos and jerks.
He learns that distinction. Very important nowadays. No, so he learns to be human again. Very Terminator 2-esque. The whole I understand now why you cry, but it's something I can never do. That kind of thing. And she not only rediscovers, reconnects with humanity, but it's in a large way also about her grief and her getting a sense of closure and moving on, sort of re-entering the human race as he's discovering it for the first time. And I love that parallel that they both have their equally important arcs and they complement each other in such a perfect way.
And it's like she has, you see that she's lost her connection to. She just really is lost. She's, doesn't have any. She's just watching old videos and just drinking alone. And she just, you can tell that she's just so alone and is lacking any kind of like connection because probably, the person that she was closest to was taken from her. And, at the end, Starman gives her back a piece of that by giving her his child. So
his child and Scott's too.
Right.
So
just like that. What isn't there didn't in China they made a kid that had three parents?
I think so. That sounds like something that would happen.
That's Star Kid over there.
Star Kid. That's a movie from the 90s, isn't it?
Something like that. I don't know. That's Star Kid.
I don't have a whole lot else in my notes to cover. I did want to ask you that apparently there was a Starman remake announced a few years ago because of course there is. As we're recording this, the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles Pointless remake was just announced, I think, yesterday. And how do you feel about a Starman remake? I mean, obviously, it's not going to be the same. Do you think that there's a room for them to either improve is the wrong word, but bring something to this concept, or are you just like they're going to screw it up like right out the gate?
Well, that remake. I don't know. Has anybody heard about it since I think
it's a few years ago. So if it's still happening, it maybe is bogged down in development, whatever.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be again produced by Michael Douglas, directed by Sean Levy. Sean Levy did Night at the Museum.
Yeah, so there you go. That's the level of filmmaking
right, so
here. That's why
Night
I'm like,
at the Museum guy.
Not that guy's not going to do it.
Right, and I think it was supposed to be very different than this one.
Well,
I wonder, I know that they were going to skew younger, so we're going to get like YA Starman, I guess.
Oh boy.
I know that Karen Allen and Jeff Bridges are in their early 30s in 1984. So I don't know. Maybe there's room to make them slightly younger, I guess. But I don't know who. I mean, these days. You know what? I'm down with it as long as it's Kevin Hart and Melissa McCarthy. There you go.
Nice. There you go. But you gender swap it. So she's the star woman.
Right. Yeah. She's star woman.
I mean, and obviously, I'm cool with all the female led movies and all that stuff, but it does feel like they just lean on that when they don't have any other ideas, and they're just like, let's just flip it. Well, that'll work, right? So it wouldn't surprise me if I just feel like a Starman remake, especially in the hands of someone who's less distinctive than John Carpenter, is just going to feel like exactly what we've said this movie avoids at every turn.
Yeah, it's going to have none of the simplicity, none of the what was I saying? None of the restraint. Right. All that restraint is going to be gone once we get Night at the Museum Starman.
Yeah, Ben Stiller as Starman.
Ben Stiller. Now we're going way older.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think I don't think that Jeff Bridges was happy about the remake from what I think I've read. I don't think he was asked to participate.
Whatever. It's kind of, you have to just
like, I kind of hate that anyway when, he'll be like, the worst is when it's like in like Ghostbusters and Dan Aykroyd is a cab driver.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
That's exactly when we said that Jeff Bridges would be the guy who's like, so what do you do for a living? Like
I make maps. Yeah.
And Jeff Bridges has been locked into like that true grit zone for like a decade. So he just like, what are you doing around here?
It's like all he can do is a mumble now.
Yeah, that's his thing. And that kind of, with Crazy Heart, that's what got him the Oscar, which is weird.
Yeah. Yeah. And he got that Oscar before they were like, oh, that's all he does is mumble now.
Well, I think he did it in Crazy Heart. And then he's just like, oh, this works.
And then he like fell and he hit his head and he's like, oh, this is all I can do now is mumble is Crazy Heart. Oh, my mom always said not to make this face or I'd get stuck.
So having that version of Jeff Bridges in my head, it was weird to go back and be like, wow, he was much, much more nuanced as an actor once upon a time. Not to say he's a bad actor now, because he's still a great actor, but he's much more in that like Tommy Lee Jones curmudgeon zone these days, which is a bummer considering how good he is in this movie and in some of his earlier work. But is there anything about Starman we haven't covered that you wanted to make sure we mention before we start winding down?
Wow, I don't know. I feel like we left no stone unturned on this one, I think.
Awesome. That's what I like to hear.
How do you think? Are you happy about the coverage of Starman here?
I am actually. And I love that first of all, I wanted to say thank you for bringing this to the table because I hadn't seen this movie before, like I mentioned, and I ended up kind of loving it, I think. Mm-hmm. It's like one of the most definitely one of the most underrated movies we've covered on here relative to how much people talk about it now and how good it really is. Yeah. I think it's kind of insane that it slipped among the ether of 1980s, I guess 1984 sci-fi. Yeah. Let's put it that way, because there is so much.
I love it. It's that oddball in Carpenter's, library of movies.
Yeah. So I definitely recommend people listening to this that haven't seen Starman, as I'm assuming a lot of them haven't seen it, just because it's also not available to stream readily anywhere. I mean, I rented it from Amazon because it wasn't on any of the like 5 streaming services I have.
Yeah, because it's not a big Carpenter movie. Right. It's not a big one. Yeah.
And it seems like the Blu-ray is out of print sort of at the moment on Amazon. Like I was just curious about it and I didn't even see that there. So
like that makes this one even better because you have to go find it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's that one oddball movie. And I guarantee you that you'll watch it again. You just will. Like you'll be in that mood where you're like, I'm in the Starman mood.
It's also a testament, I think, to physical media too. I mean, there was all these reports recently that Disney's not releasing 4K versions of any other movies or whatever. And that was like debunked, maybe, who knows, but I'm very much a physical media guy. So now I'm probably going to check and see if like the local used Blu-ray store around here has a copy, just because I want to rewatch and show my wife. I didn't get a chance to watch it with her. And I was like, I think she would really enjoy it just because it is such a sweet movie and has such heart to it. Which I wasn't expecting. Again, being a kid growing up with it kind of around and not really having much active interest in watching it. I don't think I would have appreciated it at that age anyway.
Yeah. I mean, like I was saying before, I picked it up when I was a kid because it said Alien. It had like some alien in it. And I was like, all right, aliens. I like those movies because I'm, 8.
Yeah.
And like, and then the movie just brings like, you'll get something different out of it. The older you get. Yeah. I think it's a movie that is pretty timeless to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
See? It's a classic in my house.
Good job, JC. Good choice.
Welcome. You're very welcome, Robert Yanis.
Tell people where. Back to the junior thing.
Robert Yanis, Junior.
Yes.
I know there's two of you.
There is. He's be quiet. All right. I want to talk about Starman.
Don't hit me again.
No, God, don't make me sound like that guy. Tell people where they can find you, and of course, ScreenFix on social media.
Yeah. Okay. So again, you can find us at ScreenFix Pod, and anywhere that you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple, all of these wonderful places. You can follow us on Twitter at ScreenFixPod. You can follow me. I'm JC ScreenFix. And that's where you can find us and listen, give our podcast a listen. We're usually getting up to something silly and fixing movies. Recently we've done The Old Guard, which is the film that was big on Netflix. Charlize Theron is an immortal, and that is one we did with Robert. Woo. And of course, we do have over 100 episodes to check out. So there's plenty of stuff for you over at ScreenFix.
Great. Thank you so much, JC, for coming on the show. This was a lot of fun. We'll have to bring you back on at some point so I guess you should start thinking about what you want to talk about next time now, so that you have a lot of room for contemplation and kind of deliberate over if you're making the best choice or whatever.
Yeah. What's funny? Like if you would have asked me not during a pandemic, like when I wasn't looking for cinematic comfort foods from when I was a kid, I would have done something completely different, I got to think, whenever you would like me on again, I'm sure something will be, whatever mood I'll be in, I'm sure I'll be ready. And don't be a stranger over at ScreenFix yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you guys need me, I'd love to come on there and fix some more
slice
movies.
And dice.
That's right, exactly. All right, JC. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
You're welcome.
If you're interested in joining me on the show to chat about one of your favorite films, head on over to crookedtable.com/guest. Or you can consider supporting the show at patreon.com/crookedtable. Of course, you can always find more podcasts, reviews, videos, and other movie-related goodies over at crookedtable.com. Until next time, this has been the Crooked Table Podcast, and I've been Rob.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
CROOKED